Welcome back to another episode of The Hip. My name is Amy Cork, UK Manager and EDI Champion of Anderson James. This is the podcast where every single week we bring you a leader from across the sector to discuss the biggest challenges in HR and EDI today. Today on The Hip, I was delighted to be joined by Katherine McGough and Amy Woodcock from North Star Housing. We speak to Katherine and Amy about the increase in board diversity at North Star through their training programme, and also advice and insights into why younger people should choose housing as a career. I hope that you enjoyed the episode, and if you do, I ask that you like and subscribe so that we can reach as many people as possible. Welcome to The Hip, both of you.
Hiya.
It'd be good today if we could just start with the purpose of the listeners with a brief introduction to yourselves and how you got into housing.
Yeah, I'll go first. So I'm Amy Woodcock and I've been working for North Star now for about 9 years. I'm employed as the People Services Project Lead, and the main objectives of my role are to support the People Services function and to keep North Star strong through the implementation of new approaches, reviews and initiatives.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy.
So I'm Katherine McGough, I'm Head of People Services. I've been with North Star for almost 13 years, which is kind of unheard of. Considering when I started out my career, I did loads of job hopping. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But when I found HR, I felt like I found my home.
Your purpose.
Yeah, and loads of problem solving, never 2 days the same. And then that was further enhanced when I found housing. So I think housing, people don't necessarily understand it and fall into it. And then you don't leave. And I think that's because it's never dull. And you're helping to change people's lives.
Yeah.
And we're up against it, you know, externally, with less and less resource out there, different changes to government. But the challenge is incredible in terms of working together in collaboration with others.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you both so much. So I guess the first topic today that I wanted to discuss, I know when we caught up previously, we were talking about board recruitment, and everybody talks about board recruitment and what they're doing. But I know when we spoke, you guys were focusing a lot on the EDI side of that board recruitment and putting together a little bit of a training program. So if you could, I guess it'd be really good for us to kick things off today with just bringing that to life a little bit.
Yeah. So we've done quite a bit on EDI initiatives, and we'd ran apprenticeship programs for people from ethnically diverse backgrounds, and they'd worked really well. They were really successful. But over COVID, our chief executive was looking to see how we could get our governance structures to represent the communities that we work in, which, you know, they just didn't, and like many other boards. So we worked in partnership, actually, with Housing Diversity Network and other housing associations, so Gen 2, Beyond, 13 Group, and we put together a board trainee programme. So a 2-year programme. We ran it through COVID, so we had an open day where we had about 100 staff, which was really hard to negotiate.
I can imagine.
But we did because we were determined. And what we ended up with was 12 graduates, if you like. So we were looking for where our governance structures were underrepresented. So young people, people from ethnically diverse communities. Some people were looking at disabled candidates, tenants. And we managed to get 4 for North Star.
That's amazing.
And what we said was we would get people just board ready for the region. So it was a regional initiative, and we couldn't have done it independently. We had to work together, all of us. And what we did was Housing Diversity Network did the training. So the question we came up with was, how do young people get into board positions when they haven't got the experience or the qualifications at that stage? So we got the qualifications through Housing Diversity Network, and they came and joined us to have a lived experience on our board. And that was really eye-opening to us all. It was eye-opening for them and for us.
Yeah.
Because we were really recruiting for diversity of thought. You know, if you get the same people on the board, you get groupthink. And that's what we wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
So we, as I said, it was a 2-year programme, no commitment for either party on the end, because the overall commitment was to get board-ready young people into the North East.
Yeah.
But as it happened, North Star had a vacancy at the end of the 2-year programme. So 2 of our trainees applied, one of them was successful, and she's now sitting on our board, which was brilliant.
Amazing.
And we've got lots of other kind of byproducts because it opened lots of conversations. We hadn't done unconscious bias training for a long time, so we did that. Other housing associations got people who'd come forward as candidates. They didn't quite meet the criteria for the programme, but they became like critical friends for the organisation.
Yeah.
So overall, it was really successful, and then more.
Yeah. Yeah, like a long-lasting success.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
think we'll see them young people coming through different organisations in the region over the course of time, and it's been brilliant to be part of that.
Amazing. Perfect. So obviously we've spoke a little bit there about the success of the programme. What would you say that the biggest challenges were that kind of cropped up over the course of the 2 years, and keen to kind of dig a little bit on how you overcome that to make it such a success?
Yeah. I think first of all, the recruitment. I mean, how do you recruit people into those, really important positions when they haven't got either potentially the education or the experience?
Yeah.
And how do you make that fair for everyone as well? So one of the things we did, there was a few different elements to the processes. We wanted to check that people were definitely interested in it. So we put a number of processes in place. But as it came towards the interview process, we asked candidates to bring an item into the interview with them. It was all online, but to the interview, which demonstrated their association with social purpose. And so we had all sorts of things getting brought in.
I can imagine.
We had family pictures, we had items from people's kind of attic. There was all sorts of different things. But one of the candidates brought in a paper doll. And she had lived with her grandma in a different country for years and years. And her grandma had told this story that when she was younger, she had a paper doll and she tried to bathe the paper doll. And of course, all of the stuff on the paper doll had disappeared. And it was heartbreaking, but it was also really, it was good for the soul. It was great to hear about that. And it was something I've never tried in recruitment before.
Yeah.
It took layers and layers of the individual. It took us right down to the core of the individual and what made them tick.
Yeah.
And we didn't lose any candidates at North Star. We've seen our 4 candidates come through from the beginning right to the end. Also some odd things. So I got lots of phone calls from people who were already qualified and had obviously had lots and lots of experience, who wanted to join that opportunity. But really what we were trying to say was it was for underrepresented groups.
Yeah, trying to open up some doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was any others that you can think of that were a challenge. I mean, having it over COVID was a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been great if we could have just hired a room somewhere and
had an open day
but we didn't let it stop us. I think the other thing I probably would have done with hindsight was just reflect that our panel was predominantly white, predominantly old. I think sometimes you've just got to get that out on the table, because I think what it does is it enables people to understand that you do really want difference, and that we haven't got it currently, but that's what we're aspiring to.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And it sounds like you did, all the right things. You did. I've never heard of that before, about bringing something to an interview to get to the social purpose. But, you mentioned it previously. If you're always doing the same thing, you're always going to get the same result. So I really like that. I think it's unique, and it clearly works for you at North Star as well.
I think it demonstrated passion for people. There was obviously a niche in the market. I mean, I got lots and lots of calls from the Southeast.
Okay.
So I think, you could probably replicate this elsewhere. I think it's something that you really pick up and take elsewhere. It's not rocket science. Just have to have a lot of energy like you do for any EDI initiative.
Yeah, of course. And just sticking with the EDI theme then, another thing that I know that we spoke about previously was the guaranteed interview scheme that you rolled out. Again, if you could just bring that to life a little bit for the purpose of everybody listening, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So the interview scheme that we brought in to our recruitment processes was actually based on the Rooney Rule, which is an American policy from the National Football League, and it's named after Dan Rooney, who was the previous owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what they did was they brought in a policy whereby every candidate that came through for any senior role or head coach job, if they were ethnically diverse, they would be guaranteed an interview. So having a look at sort of our KPI around ethnicity and increasing the diversity in the workforce, we thought, how can we adapt this to the way that we run our recruitment processes?
Yeah.
And what we looked at was what we already had in place. So we do already have, we are disability confidence scheme members. And what that means is similar kind of thing. If anybody during the recruitment process declares themselves as having a disability, as long as they meet all of the essential criteria, we will guarantee them an interview. So using that same methodology, we adopted the Rooney Rule. We just don't refer to it as the Rooney Rule.
Renamed it.
Exactly, because I think in England, everyone's immediately going to go to Wayne Rooney.
Yeah, I did.
Not named after him. So yeah, we decided to use the same concept really. So, but we didn't stick to just senior roles like the Americans do. We thought we'll roll it out across all of our vacancies because to be fair, we don't have a huge amount of vacancies. We probably average around 15 a year. So it seemed more practical to do it across every vacancy.
Yeah.
And we've probably been doing that for about 3 years-ish now. And we have seen a difference when looking back at the stats. In 22-23, only 13% of the candidates that we interviewed had declared themselves as being from ethnically diverse backgrounds. But when looking at the 2023 to 24 figures, that's leaped up to 30%.
Wow.
Of the applicants who were interviewed were actually from an ethnically diverse background. So we can see that it is definitely making a difference, and we are seeing more people come through. And since then, in the last 3 years, we have actually been able to recruit 3 permanent members of staff who did declare themselves as being from ethnically diverse backgrounds. And that's across everything. That's supported housing and our data and digital team. And we did have a really good success story with that, in that one of the candidates who had declared themselves as ethnically diverse had applied for a particular role. There was another candidate who was deemed more suitable for the role. However, the recruiting manager really saw potential in this candidate. Yeah. And we'd realised was that he was actually living in England on a graduate visa, having completed a degree at the local university. And the recruiting manager really, like I said, did see potential in him. And he didn't quite have the skill set there for the role that he'd applied for, but he didn't want to lose him because he knew that this was a great opportunity for us. So a business case was pulled together to create a new role within the data and digital team. So that allowed us to then offer him the role based on the interview and everything he'd gone through for the role that he'd initially come through for. And he was successful in getting that. But we then had to consider the fact that he was on this graduate visa and how long he had left to remain in the country. So again, seeing his potential, seeing how well he was doing in the role, we then progressed on to applying to be a sponsor for him.
Oh, fantastic.
Gone through that whole process. It was quite long. It's quite a hard process. It's quite difficult.
Yeah.
But we have been successful. We've been able to become a sponsor, and he's successfully applied for a skilled worker visa.
Oh, amazing.
And at that time, he's actually been promoted within the team as well. So it was such a good call because, like I say, he initially came through based on the Rooney Rule initiative he'd implemented. And we just saw that in the potential that he had, really.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I would add to that is that until you go through processes like that, you don't really understand the barriers that people face.
Yeah.
This person could physically drive a car, but wasn't permitted to drive a car until the last few months.
Yeah.
Now, you probably don't realise that unless you're involved in that process. Yeah. You don't really understand the barriers that people face.
Of course. So just sort of highlighting that and then being able to address them clearly works wonders.
Definitely.
Perfect. No, it's so good to hear. I think that being able to put forward such a good success story as well, hopefully will encourage more people to start to apply for more roles, and roll out initiatives like North Star have done.
And I think that was a response to recruitment as well. Recruitment is on its head at the moment and thinking differently. I think you've got to think differently about how you get talent into your organisation. We probably wouldn't have done that 10 years ago.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
The marketplace has given us a different story at the moment. So you work with that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, and then another point that we discussed previously, we touched on the staff demographic questionnaire and all about the sort of different action points then that were pulled from this. And I know when we spoke, there were some really interesting topics. So again, if you could, just for the purpose of the listeners, sort of bring that to life, what the results from the questionnaire were, and then from that, what kind of came into action and what the outcome has been.
Yeah, no problem at all. So we probably started doing our staff demographic questionnaires around 2019. We made the decision to keep it as an anonymous survey because we thought that was probably the best way to get a really good response rate from staff. And to be fair, we did get a really good response even from 2019. However, the questions were quite standardised at that point because it was the first time we'd done it. And what we did was we used the results from that demographic survey and we compared it to the 2011 census data at the time, just to be able to sort of correlate and see whether we were representative of the communities that we serve. And the results were quite good at the time as well, but we kind of knew that there was probably still a little bit more work needed to be done with it.
Yeah.
We didn't complete the survey in 2020 because initially we were going to look to do it every 2 years. So the next one was done around 2021, at which point the National Housing Federation had introduced what they call their EDI tool. Now, that's a tool for all housing associations across the country to be able to input their own demographic data, and it's broken down by workforce, executive team, board and customer base. And we're able to enter our data into that, and that then pulls through the information based on where your stock is in the country and makes those comparisons for you in terms of representation. So what we decided to do, because we really did want to take part in the EDI tool, we should probably align our questions to that EDI tool.
Yeah.
So we did that, put the survey back out again, and again got a really good response rate. Obviously had to explain to staff why we'd changed the questions, and we explained to them about the EDI tool, and we didn't get any hesitation or anything like that. People were quite happy to fill it in. Following that, in 2022, we actually introduced some specific sort of EDI training, specifically around menopause, disability awareness and men's health. So that combined with the EDI tool kind of gave us that incentive to review the questions again.
Yeah.
This time we used some of the facilitators from that training as critical friends in terms of reviewing those questions. So it was just to ensure that the terminology was correct, that we were adding the right information in there, push that survey out. And we actually did see a difference, particularly around the disability question. In that, in the 2019 survey, we only had 7% of staff declare a disability or long-term health condition, so less than 12 months or more. In the 2022 survey, that increased to 32% of staff. Now, we believe that that is probably a combination of how we worded the question and the training that was received and their understanding of what a disability is and what a long-term health condition is. So it was great to see not only that increase, but the fact that staff felt happy and okay to declare that information.
Comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the last survey we did, 2023, that one went out. And again, I think every year reviewing those questions is the right thing to do, because we know that everything changes with regards to EDI all the time. So we
12 months is a long time, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we reviewed them again, and again, that was in line with changes to the EDI tool and the fact that this time we had different census data. So we had the 2021 census data that could be used against census. So the biggest change really again was to the disability question, and that incorporated what would be defined as a disability according to the Equality Act. So it was broken down into 3 parts. And again, we got 91% return rate on the questionnaire. And what we uncovered was that of those staff who declared themselves as having a disability, 38% of those would actually be deemed as having a disability in line with the Equality Act. And of those, 25% were attributed just to mental health. Right. That was quite interesting. And I think that's probably what sparked a lot of the next stage of sort of initiatives that we introduced. And it was very much focused around wellbeing. Okay. So there was lots of things that we sort of looked at. And I think one of the biggest things was we developed a wellbeing group. So we popped out a survey to staff just around wellbeing in general, sort of what people would like to see within the organisation that would help towards wellbeing, and of those people who would be interested in being part of a wellbeing group. And we did get a really good response from that, and we've now got an established wellbeing group, and we meet sort of every 3 months just to look at what we can push out to the staff and what's new, what's up and coming, etc. We also realised that in our absence management policy, we have sort of 3 triggers with regards to sickness. And we realised that we needed to remove one of the triggers, which was an absence of 6 days or more in any 12-month rolling period. After COVID in particular was when we kind of looked and realised that a lot of those absences where people were hitting that trigger were directly related to maybe some kind of mental health absence, and or when they've been off for treatment, operations and recovery. Right, okay. Related to that. So we realised that there was a bit of, I don't know if unfairness is the right word to use, but it didn't seem right to be stating that staff had hit a trigger when they'd been off for an operation.
Yeah, and they're recovering.
Yeah, they'd been off for a long-term condition, whether it be an operation or a mental health condition. So we realised that from a wellbeing perspective, it was probably the right thing to do in terms of removing that trigger and amending the policy to reflect that. So that was very well received, I think, by staff.
And I think what I would say is that's why the data comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Important. Yeah, because it anchors you back. Because you go on an EDI pathway and you can get lost on because there's all sorts of different junctions and that you can take, but your data will tell a story. Yeah. So we've got an ageing workforce. We need more young people in housing, and wellbeing is important to us. It's in our corporate plan. It's been in our corporate plan for the last 10 years. So why it felt like counterintuitive to have a policy which would penalise people for looking after their physical health. Yeah. And it was tied into COVID, COVID, the NHS closed its doors in COVID. It had to, it didn't have a choice. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, everybody was going for an operation at the same time. And that's why it stood out to us. But having the data to be able to support your decisions that you're making is the reason that we do the demographic survey in the first place. Yeah. Because the data tells us what we need to do. So when we did get our statistics massively improved. We've been trying to improve our statistics for years and years and years. And just some nuances, different ways of asking questions, getting staff aware of what a disability might look like and to try to normalise that, Yeah. And for people to declare it. Was where we should have targeted our efforts, and we eventually did, of course, and then we got our statistics moved. But then it's asking the wellbeing group, what more can we do? What more can we do for people who've got physical conditions? So, of course, we treat the absence in the same way. We can't keep sick pay forever. Yeah. My way I would, but we can. So it will still be contribute to sick pay. People will still do return to work in the normal way. If we need counselling or physio or occupational health, we'll still do all of them good things. But we won't take it down a formal route, we won't attribute it to it, which just is such a relief for people.
No, I agree. And I think the fact that now you're having these sort of 3 monthly conversations, like we said earlier about how quick things move on, being able to speak to these groups 4 times a year just gives people the opportunity to then reflect on what they've done, what's been the successes, anywhere that they kind of need any development points, and then, like you say, can realign. I think that's such a positive spin on it, and being able to constantly sort of change.
I think the other thing that the Wellbeing group thought about was, frontline's getting harder. There's no question about it. Living day to day is getting harder for everyone. Everyone understands that. It's really hard to get a GP appointment. It's almost impossible to get into the dentist.
Yep.
And our frontline, we're facing it, repairs are going up in terms of costs because materials are. And so they were saying, we feel stressed sometimes at work. We've got, we're feeling it on the front line. So we developed a stress and nutrition workshop. Because you can put interventions in all day long, but stress has to start with yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're responsible for your own self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done some workshops that have been absolutely brilliant. We've talked about kind of gut health, breathing, all sorts of different things. I've had a nutritionalist on site and a physiotherapist on site, all qualified. But one of the things that we've took out of it is commitment checks. So people have got to commit to what self-care they can do for themselves, and also how can we help one another when it's tricky on the front line on a Monday morning and things go wrong, which inevitably they do.
Yeah, of course.
Help one another.
Yeah.
And so we've done some commitment checks to bring that back. And we've said we'll put any interventions, reasonable interventions in place for you. But, your self-care starts with yourself. And so people have started doing all sorts of things.
I can imagine.
Join gyms, lots and lots of different healthy ways to look after yourself, because we are, you're important, aren't you? We've got to look after ourselves in terms of our health and well-being.
Yeah,
it's been a good programme. And the other thing that we've just recently done, and again, it's through the Wellbeing group and through questionnaires. I know staff might not like questionnaires from time to time, but we always tell staff what we're doing with them so they understand the importance and the value of them. We've put healthcare programme in for people. So the organisation pays an annual amount, and staff can then get into a dentist or into a GP, because we know that's hard now.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's responding to what people are telling us.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's something that North Star can definitely be proud of, because it's very apparent that you genuinely care. And, the questions that you're asking they're not just there for a tick box exercise. You're getting the results and you're doing something about that. So that is fantastic to hear.
I think that is what's key. It's about being transparent with your staff as well. Like, you can see that we don't ask all these questions and collate all this data just to tick a box. Staff know that something good will come of the work that we're doing.
And they play a massive part in getting the training. So we've got an inclusion group. It's about 14 members of staff, all done lots of good work in relation to inclusion, whatever that looks like, because it's vast. And when we get some training in, they trial it through the inclusion group. And so when we had the disability awareness, our inclusion group said, that's good. And our staff will welcome that awareness. And they did. And, for me, EDI is lots and lots of things happening all at the same time. And the more voices you have, the more engaged you can be with your workforce. Yeah. It's great to have an EDI ambassador. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. Somebody high profile. But one person is one voice.
Yeah.
And so we try and listen to the many and not to the few.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And it is, like I say, it's lovely to hear. It really is. And just sort of in terms of the future then, I guess, sort of over the next 12 months, what would you say is the sort of the key priority now with your EDI policy that you're looking to get over the line in the next year or so?
We need to look at customer data in the way that we've looked at staffing data, and we've looked at that really carefully. We need to do the same for customers. That's a corporate objective for us. Wellbeing will continue to be important for us, and we're currently engaged with local universities, so Teesside University, Northumbria University, and Sunderland University, we're trialling, it's in the infancy, but we're trialling a fast track programme to get our hard to reach posts, hard to fill posts, and try to get ethnically diverse candidates to fill those posts through the university route.
Okay,
so
amazing.
Whether that'll be on the third year of a degree course, for example.
Yeah.
And then hopefully when they've been with us for the third year, they'll never want to leave us. Here's at North Star, we don't get a lot of turnover. But just working with them so that, I think they were called milk rounds in my younger days, but we can get our colleagues to speak at university so people can understand what housing is, because people don't generally understand what housing is.
Yeah.
And it's great to work in housing. You do good work all day long. It makes total sense. You always contribute to stuff.
Yeah.
And it changes people's lives. I guess before I retire, I would love to see that we've got the kind of succession planning going on in universities out there and in, careers wider than that, so that people can understand what housing is and so that they can come and work for us, because it's really innovative. Some of our digital and data team are working with robots in our supported housing schemes. Like, that's amazing. It's brilliant.
It's exciting.
Yeah, so I want some young people in to come and join us and give us their thoughts and play a part. So I guess that working with the universities on that kind of fast track programme, which is in its infancy, will also lead to further relationships to get us into the universities in the early days, so people can forge a career in housing, because it's great. It's great to come and work in housing.
Yeah. I'd love to get a conversation with you both in the next 12 months as well and see how far that's come. That'd be really good.
And the unis, you can't do these things on your own. No. Collaboration is really important.
Yeah, I think that's been apparent throughout this whole conversation, is that, working, whether it be the HDN, the universities, the other North East housing associations, everybody working together is how you're ultimately going to achieve the best results.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And I guess final question from me today is, what advice would you give somebody that's looking to get into the HR side of the housing sector?
I think, I was a bit like Kath in what she said earlier on, in that it's probably fair to say I did just fall into housing.
Everybody says that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my background, I started 22 years ago in the NHS, and then I moved into drug and alcohol rehabilitation and kind of moved into housing from there after leaving that way. So, but I think the connecting factor there is around being in a caring environment, working with people. Yeah. So I think it's probably about, for me, increasing your own knowledge and making your own self-awareness sort of up there, upskilling yourself, that kind of thing, and just having a little more of an understanding about what a housing association is. And I think that's the problem. I didn't know 9 years ago what a housing association was. Yeah. I had no reason to know, really. And that's probably quite a selfish thing to say, in that, why shouldn't we know? Why shouldn't this be getting taught in schools, in colleges? Like, why are they not informed enough about what social housing is? Because it does affect people around you. There is people who are in social housing. A lot of these kids might be in social housing, but what recognise it as social housing. So I think it's about raising awareness, but also taking the onus yourself to be able to understand a little bit more about it.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think for me, it's that old adage of find something that you love and you'll never have to work another day in your life. I think for me, that's HR. It's really great. I would encourage anybody to progress a career in HR, and you can have loads of different strands of HR, and you'll never have 2 days the same. In terms of housing, so I spoke to, we've got IIP Platinum. I've got to say that because it's really important. And when we were doing our last assessment, so we've been assessed 3 times as Platinum. When we were doing our last assessment, one of our housing officers said, I've been looking after this family who'd been put up in a bed and breakfast for, months. And she said, give them the key to the front door and they had a kitchen. That's what I get up for on a morning. And I think that's what it is. Yeah. You are changing people's lives. Yeah. You understand every day the work that you're doing will contribute to something bigger and better. And it changes all of the time because we're impacted by so many external factors. So we're working together collectively all day, every day to get a great solution for our tenants and our staff.
Yeah.
It's worth a shot. Come on in and have a go.
No, I agree. And what a lovely way to round everything off. So thank you both for those. So just in terms of everything that we've spoken about today then, if anybody did want to reach out to either of you regarding the topics we've discussed, would the best place be LinkedIn for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Pop an email in.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you both today. It's been really informative and really useful. So thank you both for coming on.
Oh, no problem. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Hip. If you'd like to hear more from us, please be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast platform. We are also running a 30-minute clinic free of charge to any clients that want to recruit in a more inclusive way. For more information, please reach out to us on our website, andersonjames.com.